Joe Burrow getting ready for 2021, recovering from the torn ACL. All indications have been positive, Chris. But as we've discussed multiple times recently, until he's out there playing, we don't know how it's all going to turn out for Joe Burrow. Will he be as effective as he was before he suffered that injury? Let's hear from Zac Taylor, head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, talking about Joe Burrow as he gets ready for year two.
It's been fun to watch him because he looks good throwing the football. Obviously he can't do all the movement stuff that he'll be doing, once the season rolls around. But I'm just watching him throw the football. It's the same old Joe. He looks better every single day I see him. There's a little more movement there. But certainly the distance stuff is something that's not off limits for him right now. And so I know he's just trying to get reacquainted with some of these receivers and get some extra throws in, and that's been good to see.
Hey, look, important year for Zac Taylor. Not as important for Joe Burrow from the standpoint of his long-term career.
Right.
But Taylor's got to do something to reverse this funk the Bengals have been in. And yes, last year Burrow's injury helped contribute to the tailspin, but the record is not good through 2 years. Third year for Taylor is going to require Burrow and a lot of guys to get it done at a high level to keep Taylor on the right side of the employment line for the Bengals, Chris.
Yeah, I would think so. I don't know what that would take either. That's to me, I mean, you got to be realistic. I think if you are ownership of the Cincinnati Bengals and everything like that too, I mean, I don't think you can realistically look at it and go, I expect our roster to win the division this year. I mean, that at least to me. So I don't know, Mike, like I just ask you, like what does he have to do, you think? Just like off the top of your head, and I know it's June 2nd here, but like, what do you think record-wise he might have to do to save his job? I don't think it's realistic to say like, oh, he's got to go to the playoffs. I don't. Not from with the team he took over, the division he's in, and all of that, with the young quarterback and all of that. So I just wonder what the line of demarcation is there.
I think the main thing is he's just got to avoid a disaster.
Right.
Whatever a disaster would count as, because as we've discussed in the past, the Bengals do not like to pay coaches to not work. And, we a lot of times you don't know the details of a contract, and you never will know the details until, for example, a guy gets fired after 3 years and it turns out that only the first 3 years of his salary were guaranteed. I remember when they fired Marvin Lewis. He had a year left on his contract. I was stunned. Wait a minute, they don't like to have buyouts. Oh, it turns out that the next year, the last year, was a team-held option, so they didn't owe him anything. So that's the key. If they owe him anything for 2022, it would have to be 2-15, 3-14 to get Zac Taylor fired this year. I really think that, if he has money owed to him in 2022.
I think I'm with you. I think it would have to be. I feel the same way. As long as they're in the fight. They're not a pushover. They're somewhat relevant to a degree. I would think that, that Zac Taylor has a chance to, buy another year as far as him coaching this Cincinnati Bengals football team. But we'll see. I mean, they did some good things in the draft, free agency, but like we've stated, the division's really good, and now you got a beat-up quarterback and dealing with that. They're trying to figure out their offensive line and everything there. So there is some question marks, certainly, and some like unproven, commodities still. So there's a lot of work to be done there in Cincinnati.
The over/under from PointsBet for Bengals wins this year is 6.5. I still think they could go 6-11, maybe even 5-12. Once you get down to 4-13,
it just looks
really
horrible.
Trying my best to make sure the total is 17. It's not easy to get used to. 4 or less, that's when I think he's got a problem.
Yeah, I think you're right, because like when you see 4-12 or 4-13 or anything like that, your first thought is when you see that number on a team's record, you go, they were a disaster this year. They're a disaster. That's really the thought, and it kind of carries on to the offseason and why they're drafting where they're drafting and those type of issues. So, yeah, I'd probably say, I don't know, in a year like this, he might have to get 7 wins. It might have to be a 7-10 type record, which still sounds so freaking weird to say that. Holy cow.
There were rumors late last year.
I know, remember?
That he was out.
Yeah.
And the Bengals felt compelled to issue a statement the day after the regular season ended announcing that he was coming back, which just legitimized the fact that the talk was out there. When does that ever happen, that you have an affirmative statement from a team that the coach is going to be back and the coach is under contract for the next year? So It's definitely there.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.